Hello, everyone, and good evening. I hope everyone's been having a restful weekend. And after a hectic work week, we are here on a Friday evening to conduct our second webinar that is hosted by Sajida Foundation's mental health programs. And the media partner for this webinar is Dhaka Tribune. Today's topic is something that interests me immensely. It's organizational mental health. So apart from hosting or doing this, I also work as someone who's in an organization and doing the organization management as well. So this is something that I'm really interested in. So I'm hoping that there are many people who'll be watching and listening to our experts today. So before we start, I'd like to kind of give a little bit of a background or precursor about organizational mental health. So workplaces can play an essential part in maintaining positive mental health. They can give people the opportunity to feel productive and be a strong contributor to employee well-being. Yet, it can also be a stressful environment that contributes to the rise of mental health problems and illnesses. No workplace is immune from these risks. A negative working environment often leads to physical and mental health problems, harmful use of substances or alcohol, absenteeism, and lost productivity, whereas workplaces that promote mental health and support people with mental disorders are more likely to reduce absenteeism, increase productivity, and benefit from associated economic gains. With most adults spending more of their waking hours at work than anywhere else, as you all would know, or traveling to work as well, addressing issues of mental health at work is vitally important for all people. Globally, now, if I just tell you some facts, globally, an estimated 264 million people suffer from depression, one of the leading causes of disability, with many of these people also suffering from symptoms of anxiety. I think a lot of us are familiar with this nowadays, especially. A recent WHO-led study estimates that depression and anxiety disorders cost the global economy US $1 trillion each year in lost productivity. Data suggests that 55% of people with mental health problems make unsuccessful attempts to return to work. And of those who return, 68% have less responsibility, work fewer hours, and are paid less than before. Just alone in the European Union, work-related stress is of the major concern in nearly 80% of establishments. Studies have also shown that rates of mental illness are rising in the face of a pandemic that has left many isolated and struggling financially, emotionally, and physically. And these illnesses don't disappear when employees clock in for the day. Yet, even during these challenging times, far too many organizations ignore this impact, offering only empty platitudes or still treating mental illness as a taboo topic in the workplace. In light of Bangladesh, the case is similar to that of the other countries as far as organizational mental health is concerned. It can be clearly observed that the priority of maintaining a well-balanced mental health um, within the organization is often ignored in most of the corporate offices as well as in the larger industries. Especially after the pandemic initiated in the early 2020, the impact has been observed to be severe, and yet little initiative was taken to maintain the mental health well-being. Hence, in this webinar, we are here to talk about the importance of organizational mental health in Bangladesh. So that's a bit of the background, and now I would like to introduce our guests, our esteemed speakers for today. We have with us, and I hope I'm saying this right, Vibka Welgemode. Okay, she is the Chief Operating Officer of ICAS International and a licensed counseling psychologist with over 15 years experience in the EAP field. Hi, Vibka.
Hello. Hi. Very nice to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. I'll just go on to introduce the rest of our speakers. We have Mohammed Salim Hussain, who's an assistant professor in the Department of Psychology at the University of Dhaka. Mr. Salim, hello.
Hello, Shreya. Hello.
Nice to meet you. We also have Dr. Ashik Salim, who was with us in our last webinar as well. He's the head of Sajida Mental Health Program and the managing director and lead psychiatrist of the Psychological Health and Wellness Clinic. Hi, Mr. Salim.
Hi, Shreya. Nice to see you today.
You too.
Looking forward
We also, sorry, did I miss something?
I said looking forward to today's session.
Yes, yes, me too. I really want to learn and hear what all of you have to say. We also have Mr. Qazi Mustafizur Rahman. He's the COO of Psychological Health and Wellness Clinic and a management professional with deep interest in development, sustainability, finance, and technology. Hi, Mr. Rahman.
Hi. Hello. So nice to be here.
Thank you for joining us. I'll just start off. So as in also my previous webinar, we want to talk about a few specific things. So I'll just get right to it. The first topic that I'd like to raise is about Employee Assistance Program. And I'd like, Vipka, I'll just come to you first. And, I'd like for you to please tell us how it has developed over the years with respect to organizational acceptance, as well as why organizations need EAP services for the betterment of their employees' mental health, and if there is any success story, case studies, or research findings about the effectiveness of EAP programs in your organization.
Great, thank you so much, and very happy to share with you some thoughts from the global arena, but then hopefully joining you in a discussion of what that means for your environment and your country. Because I think considering that we're talking about something relating to mental health, there is no generic formula. There is no one-size-fits-all approach that you can import from another context. You can take best practice, you can take ideas and concepts, but it needs to be localized. It needs to be fitting your context, your culture, and your environment. And I think we certainly come with a deep respect for that. So what I'll share with you is generic, and I think for us it's really about making that work and fitting that into your context. And we're very proud partners of PHWC who've taken this and really run with us in your country, and really we look forward to growing that body of knowledge and understanding further. So if we look at the history of employee assistance, which has developed more in a sort of US and sort of Western context, it started with quite humble beginnings, really focusing on very specific mental health challenges like substance abuse, alcoholism, going back into the 1930s, 40s, where it was really more a drive from the industrial sector to keep workers going and to intervene, very much a back office social work type engagement with individuals. So very much focusing on dealing with existing problems, etc. Now, the field has evolved drastically over time to really look at a more all-encompassing solution that looks at various problems. So not just substance abuse, but really looking at the full range of psychosocial issues that people experience. And that came in recognition of what you mentioned earlier, Shreya, that people don't leave their problems at the gate. They bring them right into the workplace, and that will impact on how they are able to perform their work. So programs started to evolve over time to become encompassing of things like broader mental health challenges, family problems, relational problems, and issues at work that were really around the work environment rather than just practicalities. And over and above that, we saw that other issues, practical issues like people's legal concerns or their financial problems, equally impacted, caused distress, caused distraction. And so they were packaged into the concept of employee assistance over time. That culminated in the development of more professional entities, regulatory bodies, etc., that eventually put together research, and that was in the 1980s, where we speak of the core technologies of the employee assistance field, which sort of outlined what some of the key features are of the program, like the consultation to organizations, like the short-term solution-focused intervention focus, working with managers, offering additional interventions, and really working with organizations in partnership. Now, when we look at how the field has evolved, there are, for me, three trends that I wanted to perhaps outline that stand out for me. And that is one, that when we started in the field, is that the initial position was very much one of welfare and responsiveness to an existing problem. We like to sometimes refer to that like the tears and tissues approach. And that's just describing how it was really about helping an individual in distress. And we've retained that, but I think what's been added to that is that the EAP is increasingly recognized as a strategic partner within the organization to be more than just welfare, but to really be part of business success. And I'll talk about the business case in a moment, but that for us has been really something that we've observed over time. It's not just a nice to have. It's not just something that we do because we're kind or we have, the resources to give a bit extra, but it's really been seen part and parcel of achieving business success. The other transition that we've seen over time is that employee assistance started out very much from a psychosocial perspective, financial and legal incorporated, but has increasingly grown to be more encompassing of a broader well-being agenda. So looking at the whole person from a physical perspective, a spiritual perspective, a social perspective, as well as a psychological perspective. And all of those factors have been recognized to impact on people's level of distraction, distress, and productivity. And the last shift I wanted to mention is that when I certainly started in the industry, there was a great hesitation to speak of mental health. And I think that's been a broader trend in society that I'd say 15, 20 years ago, we tried to find lots of different words just not to say mental health. So we spoke about behavioral risk management, we spoke of human capital risk management, we spoke of all sorts of things, but just not to go to mental health. And that has changed completely. And what we're finding now is that there is a much greater openness at a global level and with great variation locally, but where there is a shift towards embracing the concept of mental health. And Shreya, you referred to very pertinent and very important statistics in terms of the shifts and the recognition of the impact of depression and anxiety, for example, in terms of burden of disease. And that is increasingly recognized. We've seen a number of trends that have caused all of these shifts, and that is that I think generally there's a greater awareness in terms of mental health. But there have been historically things that are driving that as well in different countries, in different contexts, where there have been some global events like various catastrophes or events, terror attacks, or a Me Too movement, or a Black Lives Matter movement, etc., in parts of the world. But most importantly and most impactfully in many regions of the world have been the experiences of COVID-19, which have accelerated the jump to realizing that we're more than just workers, but we're whole people, because we had to enmesh and entangle the work and the home environment. And in some ways, that's really furthered the mental health agenda. So I hope that gives you a little bit from a global perspective, an overview of some of the trends that we have observed. And before I jump into business case and the case studies, I was wondering whether there was perhaps a comment from my fellow panelists or perhaps any other item, Shreya, that you would like me to focus on in that regard. Any other comments? Otherwise, I'm happy to jump into the next part of the question.
So, as someone, if you could explain a bit about what usually, is in an EAP for someone who's not experienced it, I think,
sure,
if that's not a redundant question.
No, not at all. I think it's really important, and thank you for raising that. So what we normally want to achieve with an employee assistance program is that we are making professional services available to organizations which they put in place for employees, and they're normally their family members to be included. And that would normally incorporate counseling or coaching or both as services, where we would want to offer that in an as convenient a way as possible, so where people can access that 24/7 when they need to, when they want to, in a medium that they enjoy. So do they prefer chat? Do they prefer speaking on the phone? And where they can then receive counseling in the moment, assessment of their problem and their requirements, but then also receive counseling that is more ongoing. And that depends a little bit. That could be, 4, 5, 6 sessions or more, or whatever the case might be, but an engagement with a counselor over time to work on a particular problem. And similarly, we would expect that we provide legal and financial support. So if someone has a query relating to, a family law issue or consumer law issue, or struggling with debt, for example, that they can receive some practical input from professionals relating to those topics. Another component that's critical in an EAP is managerial support. And we certainly find that that is very important in most organizations, is to support managers to become better people managers. So it's not to replace HR, and that remains its own separate function, but it's in support of HR, where we are there to deal with those soft issues. So if someone needs to do performance management, how do I deal with that person on the other side? How do I have that conversation? How do you do that in an appropriate way? And so those would be some of the things that we can support managers with, and guide them and support them and build their capabilities to be good at that. And another element of that are the organizational services, supporting organizations through the data that's derived from the program, consulting to the organization in terms of the trends that we're picking up, proactive or preventative interventions that can result from that. So if we're seeing in an organization that they're struggling with work-life balance or stress, one could then put in place an intervention, and that's then evidence-based. It's not just because you think it's a good idea, it's a good idea to do that. So it helps really to shape that. And other services like supporting during critical incidents, so if there is, natural catastrophe or a particular accident at a site, where we can really intervene swiftly to contain and support, to ensure that continuity for that site, for that workplace to continue, which has a direct impact on recovery and performance following such events. So I hope that gives you a little bit of an overview what we would normally consider to be some of the core services.
It really does. Thanks for that.
Great. And then I want to perhaps jump to the business case, because you might wonder now, why would we want something like that? And what is the reason? Why spend money on something like that? And here it's important to consider the return on your investment. And there's really a very, very solid research available that highlights and shows the impact that individual problems have on the organization. So that the issues that an individual experiences, and that could be anything. It could be their physical health weighing them down. It could be mental health issues like depression or anxiety that are formally diagnosable. It could be that they have relational problems at home. It could be their financial worries that are distracting them. Now, all of that impacts directly on how they perform, which has a direct consequence for the organization. So things that we look at, you've mentioned that, Shreya, earlier so well, in terms of absenteeism as one of the most obvious markers, and that something is amiss. And another thing, however, is what we call presenteeism, which is where people are at work, but they're not really. They're not there. They're not really partaking. And with that comes a greater risk for errors and accidents, which becomes really tricky when you're dealing in an environment like a factory or safety-focused environment. You wouldn't want that. Equally, and one thing that we often underestimate is things like supervisory time, because those of you that have managed people would well relate to the experience that if you have a troubled employee in your team, the time that you spend on supporting that person and the rest of the team with it is all time you're not having for other things. And then that morale, the impact on morale, the impact that it has on the team and the lowered performance of that. And very importantly, the attrition and the losing of really good people because they're struggling, because they're not coping. And you're losing talent, you're losing expertise, things you've built over time, and people that you have developed. It can also impact on your customer service. If you're a customer service-driven organization, because someone who is not well is not going to give it their all, is not going to come across well, and that equally is going to impact. It could affect your brand. So it goes beyond just the mere calculation of absenteeism, for example. And all of these factors, all packaged together, have a direct financial impact. And it is the sick pay, it's the temporary replacement costs for an employee, it is supervisory time and salary that you could calculate there, and the costs associated with disciplinary procedures, training costs, redundancy costs, losses of customers, etc. So all of those consequences, you can attach a monetary value to it. And then you find that it's a lot less of a question of why you would want to invest in a program that addresses all of those factors for you. And we have enormously powerful evidence from many countries in the world and many environments about the effectiveness of programs in mitigating the risks and ensuring that those financial impacts are reduced and minimized. And so it's really important that we keep in mind that this is more than just being supportive. It is about ensuring that the way that your organization functions and that it does so well. So I hope that gives you a little bit of an idea there. I think what is important is perhaps to mention here that why we have generic and broader concepts around employee assistance programs. It's really important that you establish the context for Bangladesh specifically in terms of your organization, your environment, and that also in terms of the business case to look at your organization itself, your industry, your context to really anchor the concept of EAP within that. And that by its very definition, an employee assistance program and a mental health program is context specific and is driven by that. So it needs to be adjusted, it needs to be amended, and it needs to be localized through an understanding of all of that. And that takes me to the final question that you asked, Tria, which is really around examples. And I wanted to pick a country which I think has seen a very positive development in terms of employee assistance programs over time, and wanted to perhaps draw maybe not parallels, but some context-specific factors that might be of relevance for your particular environment. And in this instance, I have picked South Africa. It's a country that I have had the fortune to live in for many years. But that is marked as a country by volatile political and economic climate. There are great disparities in terms of income between rich and poor. There are extremely limited public health resources, particularly for mental health support. There are lots of people requiring care, but very little support resources to do so. And at that heart and basis was really a drive to look at how, beyond the public health sector, the private sector and the NGO sector started driving the mission around mental health. And EAPs have really become the bridge in South Africa to fill the gap between the need and that which was available from the public health side and that which it wasn't. So really filling that, getting mental health care to many, many individuals. And because the service extends to families, it reached families and communities. And it really managed to bring to life the concept of mental health This is a country where stigma around mental health, and I wonder whether that is something you can relate to in Bangladesh, where stigma was a huge factor in holding people back from seeking mental health care. And by incorporating that messages into the workplace and driving that messaging, and that was hugely successful to increase uptake and acceptance of mental health care over time. And so what we have seen in that country is a massive growth in terms of mental health availability through employee assistance program. The commitment from the government as well as from organizations to employee assistance, and really driving that as a vehicle for addressing mental health issues across the country. Another thing that stands out for me is that South Africa as a country looked for local solutions. It took what was available from Western theory, from Western concepts, and looked at how does that marry with some of the local African understandings of context, cosmologies of meaning in the world, around bereavement, around loss, around trauma, etc., and packaged all of that, finding a way to understand mental health in a local context. And again, I'm not discarding the concept, but rather embracing it and looking for a local solution. And I think for me, that stands out as a successful way of taking something and really bringing it to life in context and making it relevant for people that need it the most. And perhaps another example is from an organization where we have implemented an employee assistance program, a global organization, in fact, an airline. And I thought it's a nice and topical example. Airlines, as you could imagine, have been hit substantially by the COVID-19 crisis. They've also been hit by, obviously, financial losses because of it. And we have supported this airline over many years, have supported them through these crises, through direct support to individuals, but organizationally driving campaigns, and in some ways bringing together, when people were sent home and fragmented all over the world, literally, managing to hold it together through ongoing support. And here it was about holding things together. And in this instance with this airline, because safety is such a critical component in aviation, well-being and safety are very closely linked. And by supporting that airline, we have really been able to support them on their mission to have zero safety incidents, to support their commitment to aviation requirements, and have been driving that with them, and have been there for them when things changed and were challenged, restructuring being one of the events that they had to endure following COVID-19, where we have really been able to support and partner with them to guide them through that period. So that's just an example of a particular organization, but I think now I've really used up my time, and I shall hand up back to you, Shreya.
Thank you so much, Vipka. That was, for me, that was such an interesting examples you gave about South Africa and about the airlines and about, the setting the context for AP. And I would like to learn more. And whether in Bangladesh we have such services, I'm sure we'll get to know in this session as well. But now I want to move on a bit and talk a little bit about research activities and development of professional initiatives on organizational mental health and how that should be taken in Bangladesh. And I would like Mohammed Salim Hussain to talk about that. Also, if you would discuss about the existing scenario of organizational mental health in Bangladesh from the academic perspective.
Okay, thank you, Shreya, and thank you, Vipka, for such a nice, enlightening speech on EAP. I hope those who have joined with us, they have gone through lots of light, lots of knowledge about EAP now, and lots of clarity about EAP from Vipka. So in Bangladesh, actually, the journey on organizational mental health is relevantly new. From academic perspective, if I say, then organizational psychology or industrial organizational psychology. This has been started their journey in Dhaka University, the Prime University of Bangladesh. That is in 2015. So from 2015, we are running a professional master's program on industrial organizational psychology. And our current 5th batch is running and 6th batch are coming. So this is the academic side of industrial organizational psychology development in Bangladesh. We have also another university in Bangladesh, that is Jagannath University. They have also started industrial organizational psychology in 2016. From 2016, they have started specialized master's program on industrial organizational psychology. Before that, we actually, those who are working on organizational psychology, we collaborated with several organizations, several industry, several private organizations. And from that collaboration, or from that bridging, we collaborated with several organizations like USAID Bangladesh, like En route International. We have also collaborated with PHWC, and we have also collaborated with Epilian Group. There are several groups. Even there is another textile organization, Viela Tex. We have also worked with them. And at that time, we were aware, we were trying to aware them regarding the organizational mental health. Of course, at that time, we could not introduce EAP services for them, but we have tried to work with the mental health issues or workplace well-being issues of the workers as well as the officers of the organization. And from that push, Bangladesh government has taken an initiative, and they have gone through a law. They have established a law of appointing a welfare officer for every garments in Bangladesh. Garments who have more than 500 employees, more than 500 workers, they must appoint a welfare officer. So that has been enacted through BGMEA and BKMEA. So this is a great progress that I see. And later on the basis of this welfare officer program, we introduced a workplace well-being management program in different organizations, workplace well-being management program. And later on, whenever PHWC came into the market and they collaborated with ICAS, they came with a very specific and internationally recognized EAP service program. And from Dhaka University, we collaborated with PHWC, where as an academician, we can learn something as well as we can give something to PHWC. And through this bridging, we have started few research in Bangladesh. Actually, the EAP program that are running in Bangladesh, where we have started an impact evaluation of this EAP program so that we have some solid data, we have some solid research findings on the basis of which we can move forward. In addition to this, there are some other programs which several organizations are implementing internally. Like there are some organizations who are implementing PIP program, Performance Improvement Program. So we are also supporting this program, which are running internally. We help them develop executive coach. We help them develop executive mentoring issues. So these are the things that we are we are working in collaboration, academia and industry. As well as we are also supporting some internal EAP services. Although this is not the definition that you gave, it is not exactly like this, but they call it EAP. They provide some specific services like mental health services, and they provide some online services or on-call services. So these are the things that currently going on in Bangladesh and in academic area. And one thing that I would like to mention, that is through this industrial organizational psychology program, we have started few thesis studies, few thesis program, thesis research. Our students, our master's students who are carrying out their master's program, professional master's program, they are also running some studies. They are also doing some research on industrial organizational psychology issues, and some of them are very specific with EAP. So these are the things which are going on, and I hope with this industry academia collaboration, we will do more research on the basis of which we can look forward for a better organizational health in future. Thank you, Shreya.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hussain. I'd like to now move on because of there's a time limit, so I'm just going from one speaker to the next. I'd like to move on to Mr. Qazi Mustafizur Rahman, who is now at PHWC. So I'd like to hear from him about some of his experiences regarding organizational mental health from PHWC, and also set a perspective of what type of programs relating to organizational mental health PHWC is currently conducting, and how the same is maintained within that organization.
All right, thank you, Shreya. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to discuss about PHWC services and how we are contributing to mental health across the organizations. So actually, it dates back to the establishment of PHWC when Bangladesh was facing with the influx of Rohingya people from Myanmar. So just after the establishment, PHWC extended their support to this refugee program by supporting employees of different development organizations who were actually deployed in Cox's Bazar and were working on the rehabilitation process. So their shortcomings and their level of stress with the work actually made them feel to work with us to avail the mental health services that were being provided by PHWC. So as you know, that PHWC maintains utmost quality in its services, both in counseling and other corporate services. So we were the first to reach out to those people and to give them those help of support. And gradually, obviously, I would like to thank ICAS for the development in PHWC that we have also introduced EAP services with many organizations. So it actually, the first things where we were giving group sessions, group counseling, individual counseling, different workshops related to stress management, work-life balance, and relevant topics based on the need of the organizations. But once EAP came in, so it was a complement, right? Rather than requesting us for the services, you can actually have a year-long set hand of your help for the employees. So that was a magic that worked with those organizations that we are already working. But later on, now we have moved forward and we have over 20 clients working with us. So from ICAS International, those who are our global clients, and we have also moved locally to provide services. So I believe that, as Wabka mentioned, that it was a stigma in South Africa. The context for Bangladesh is quite similar. So often people don't speak about us. And here, there are many professionals that they have worked in different cultures in an organization. They come from very wide mindset or from a very stringent culture of pressurizing people. So in those contexts, it is taking time to educate people. So once people get this education and the awareness could be built up to actually make people avail EAP services in Bangladesh. One more thing that I would like to mention about is that so EAP services, as Wabka said, that it's available for both the employees and also their family members. So the cost and benefit analysis and this and the value addition is yet to be realized by the organizations as a whole in Bangladesh. But obviously, from PHWC, we are trying hard to build this awareness and going to to the organization's doorstep to make them much more aware, educate them. One of the key components is that we offered them with the EAP. Our packages are also customized, and with this EAP, we provide different range of services, from awareness building seminars to different workshops and complementary sessions, so that it actually flows through the mouth of people, from organizations to organizations. Once a person can get help from us, he or she will be sharing with others. So I think that essence is built in the culture of PHWC, where we try to make the organizations feel comfortable with us. Another core component is the issue of confidentiality, where actually, even you see when you are facing problem in organizations, some people do share with their colleagues, but majority actually don't want to say their weakness to others. People might deem them as mentally weak or being unable to cope up with some pressure or with personal issues. But I think our PHWC's services, our not only just the EAP, but our counseling services, our psychiatric services. We are collaborating with Salim Bhai on the training aspects. So these are opening up the rooms for people to express themselves, to be self-aware about their mental condition, and to get a safe gateway to speak about their problems. So I think the employee assistance program and any other counseling services that are evolving in Bangladesh are creating this room for the people to speak up, to stop the stigma and make more awareness about mental health and about its care. So thank you. So that was from me.
Thank you. That was a great introduction, and I think you also nicely, brought kind of highlighted what are the challenges that that you must be facing right now. Before after the next discussion point, I have a few questions myself, which we can discuss in our Q&A round, but I don't want any of the speakers to be missed out. So I'd like to move on to Dr. Ashik Salim, and I would like you to kind of, and also anyone else in Vipka, if you would also join in on this discussion, is that the role of a of course, it is very apparent that a healthy workplace is integral for overall productivity. But from a mental health perspective, if you could kind of elaborate a little, Dr. Salim, about this for the organization, how good mental health or well-being, where it's maintained, how that helps in an organization, and what type of strategies should be taken by different organizations and work environments for the overall mental health and well-being of their employees. You're on mute, Dr. Salim.
Yeah. Thank you, Shreya. I mean, I've enjoyed the last 45 minutes so much. It's been really wonderful. I mean, every time I hear Vipka talk about EAP, I learn new things, and I think there's a lot for us to take in from that. Salim Bhai is a wonderful partner for us right now, and Mustafis is carrying the torch for PHWC right now. So just wanted to say thank you to them for joining and for sharing their thoughts. From my perspective, I think Mustafis mentioning the Rohingya crisis was very pertinent because when the refugee crisis started, there was an impulse within all of us that we need to do something. We need to raise funds. We need to send clothes. We need to send food. And for us, the impulse was, well, we're a psychiatric service. Let's go and see if we can provide any kind of intervention. But at that point, we took a little bit of a step back and we thought, well, actually, why don't we support the people who are supporting the Rohingyas? And it was kind of like an aha moment for me when I thought, well, actually, and while during today's discussion, I was thinking that if we, Bangladesh is now becoming a middle-income country. We are growing. Industry is growing, service industry is growing, factories are growing, and as a result, we are all being employed. And if we are provided by well-being services by companies, then we are contributing significantly, not just to the individual, but to the family across the country. And I feel that yes, the state has responsibility for providing clinical services for those who are unwell. But if employees take on the responsibility to be able to encourage healthy or mentally well employees, then it's a significant impact on the economy and the country as a whole. So I think that's really important. One of the things I've learned throughout the years that we've been doing this is that there is a difference between there is a difference between a clinical service and an employee program, and I think this sometimes gets a little bit confusing. So, and I think it goes back to the discussion of primary care, so of health and illness. It's very important for us to realize that EAP, Employee Assistance Program, is about health. It's about mental health. We're not talking about illness. So if somebody gets a clinically diagnosable problem, then we don't look after it within EAP or within corporate wellness. Then it goes within their health insurance, or it goes within that side of it. So it's not part of this. So this is to encourage well-being. This is to make sure that the workers who are continuing their work are being able to stay with the company longer, being able to be more productive, being able to fulfill their own personal life goals more. And it's quite interesting when you talk to various people, and that's not just in Bangladesh, it's across the world. There are organizations where people want to work. They want to be there. And very often it's intangible. You're not sure what it is, and it goes up to leadership very often. It goes up to organizational culture. And these are things that we can actually promote. We can make management more sensitive to individual needs. And it's not that everybody struggles at the same time. We struggle at different times, and getting a little bit of help at the right time from the organization that they're working for, it has a significant impact on that individual and their family. So a little bit of a roundabout way to answer your question, but those were my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Vipka, would you like to say a few words about this?
Yes, with pleasure. And I think, again, thank you so much to all the speakers. I think it's really been lovely. And I think for me, equally, I think the learning to hear more about your country, the growth of the organization, but looking at the broader context in which EAP is arising and developing is hugely fascinating. And again, I think what I feel is such a fantastic approach is to place this within the context of organizations and individual support, the broader outreach to families and communities, and bringing in the research and academic element into that, because I think first of all, that's optimal reach and really bringing care and support to people. But it's also using data and research to really show the value, so that business community support and the kind of services that we bring can work hand in hand and really work with evidence to plan and further the field. And for me, that is a great initiative, and really just want to congratulate the team on it for working on that. And perhaps to comment when organizations, if you are listening and you're considering a program, I think it's important to put base services in place, because problems happen. People experience those, so that they can be looked after, but also engaging in the activities around that, moving more into the organizational system to create awareness, to drive the message. I think very important, the message of confidentiality, how the services complement. So, if, for example, perhaps it's more common culturally to address things in a family context or with particular members of the community, that this is not to replace that. It's not in competition with it. It's a different avenue. And again, to really move away from describing this as a alternative or a swap of existing resources. It's a piece in the puzzle of social support and really driving that. So the destigmatization, the focus on that, and then using data to really understand the trends and planning forward. So I think with all those pieces, I think that's a good recipe for success.
Thank you so much. So I've gone through all my discussion points and the questions I had in hand, but now I'd like to open the floor for some questions, and I actually have one that I have received. Badsha Zulkarnain says this is a nice discussion, and he has one question. He's asking, how can we differentiate between general mental health and organizational mental health? Is there any overlapping in treatment modality? Who would like to take that question? And just, I'll just let any of you decide to talk about it.
I think Salim Bhai should take this.
Okay, thank you. I was actually looking for you because you have already tried to address that question in your discussion. But whenever we are talking about general mental health. In that time, we actually focus individual from very individualistic perspective. That is his family, his personal orientation. That becomes very important in general mental health. As well as one very important distinction that Salim Bhai mentioned, that is in organizational psychology, in organizational mental health, our view is more positive. That is, a person is already functioning. In an organization, a person is already functioning, and the services, the organizational mental health services, that actually helps the person to function more. For some reason, like due to some personal reason, if the person's performance becomes lower, for some reason, for some communication reason, or for some interpersonal communication reason, the person's performance can be hampered. In organizational psychology or in organizational point of view, we actually try to remove that barrier. We actually try to alleviate that issues so that the performance of the worker, the performance of the employee becomes better. But whenever we talk about our general mental health, suppose a person might become depressed, clinically depressed. A person might become clinically anxiety, or he or she might have generalized anxiety disorder. In such cases, we see it from general perspective. It gives us a negative view. Negative view like the person is not functioning. His personal life, his family life, as well as his work life is being hampered through this. So his or her average performance becomes lower. So these are the things that usually general distinction between this. And he also asked another question, that is, what's the treatment modality? In clinical cases or in general clinical cases, of course, we do not deal it with, what should I say, in a very much inpatient way. Like in EAP services, like in organizational services, the issues that we can deal with, that we provide either EAP services or organizational counseling services, but we do not provide any kind of inpatient services over there. But in general cases, we may also refer the client to the inpatient services. So these are the general differences. I hope if anyone else would like to add, that would be more great too.
Dr. Salim, would you like to add anything to that?
No, I think Salim Bhai said right, and it fitted in with what I had also trying to discuss, that that organizational well-being, where usually we're dealing with people who are working, and it's about if they are struggling with an aspect, so it's more on the spectrum of health rather than illness. So treatment doesn't come into this, whereas in general mental health, it's more holistic. Whereas in organizational well-being, we are focusing on functionality at the workplace, and obviously, part of the employee well-being is also to be able to guide the organization in about how they can become healthier, maintaining full confidentiality. We try and provide that. So it's a little bit of a two-way process. Whereas in general mental health, it's just about very individual. So thank you for that.
Thank you for that. I'll move on to the next question that we have. I don't know, I don't have a name for it, for who has asked this question, but the question is, can we discuss the role of a manager or supervisor for employees' better mental health? Does anyone want to take that question?
I think we should hear from Wipka.
With pleasure. I think thank you for that question. I think that managers and leaders and supervisors play an enormously crucial role for the health and mental health of their employees. They work with employees every day, and I think they lead them, they determine what's being done, they decide work tasks, etc. And I'm sure you've heard the saying that people don't leave organizations, they leave managers. And we know that if your relationship with your manager is not good, it's going to make your life very miserable, and it might then lead to distress, etc. So the relationship can have an enormously positive impact. It can also have a negative impact. But if we look at managers, is that they are the ones that are needing to make decisions. They need to be the ones or they're held accountable for achieving targets and goals in their teams. And often that function is emphasized. So they report on their numbers, etc., etc. And what we're needing to achieve is that managers and supervisors understand, for them to achieve their numbers, they need a team that's functioning well. And with that, it means every single individual. So that then looking after the mental well-being of the team is not just something you do when you've finished all your other work tasks and you've ticked the numbers on your report, but it's part and parcel to get there. And that we really highlight that. So I think a lot of work is needed, working with managers and supervisors to understand that as an integral part of their role and responsibility as a manager, and to drive that, because organizational culture is driven from the top. And if we get our leaders and our managers and our supervisors to embrace the importance of well-being and driving that sets the tone for the entire organization. So that work, the work that we do with managers, is enormously impactful because it reaches all the way into the organization. It filters into the system, and it allows managers to become better people managers and really drive a culture of well-being across the board. So I hope that gives an answer to that.
It does. And I also had a question, but there's one question and I have to wrap this up in 3 minutes time. So I'll just put this out there. And the last question came from Ishrat Jahan. Sanallah Sani asks another question. He's saying, how are perceptions of mental health illness? How does that impact EAP utilization?
I'm on mute. So I'll take that. And I think we'll wrap up in 2 minutes after that. So I mean, utilization is basically the percentage of people who use our service, and definitely the perceptions of mental health has a role in it. There was a comment early on about we were discussing that thought just left me. But if we yes, I remember. So Vivka was talking about how not calling it mental health and calling it something else. And I think recently there was an example where we reached out to an organization and they said, well, can we call it something else? We don't want to use the word mental. And we said, well, sorry, it's mental health. Mental health is a thing. And by not calling it mental health, we're stigmatizing it. So when we approach an organization, we have to do sensitization. We have to go and tell them about mental health. We have to tell them about about what it is, because it's the lack of knowledge that perpetuates the stigma. And by us not calling it what it is, we are also perpetuating the stigma. So absolutely, if there's an organization which is sensitized, and that's also our responsibility to be able to give them that right sensitization. If we can do that, then definitely the utilization of the service will be higher. So absolutely. I think we still have a few seconds. We might be able to take your questions here.
Great. I was wondering if I could ask. So my question is, as far as I can see from someone who also kind of has or is in a management position in an organization, that a lot of times the heads of organizations may think that if we have such programs in place, one of the main complaints that may come across is that work stress, right? People may say, due to COVID, we have no work hours now. That has happened during COVID due to work from home scenarios, that people, the lines are blurred. There's no really 9 to 5. People are clocking in and they never know when they're going to clock out. So I was wondering, how do you deal with that? When if a certain organization, the leaders feel like, how do we deal with that when employees start speaking about work stress in a scenario where we are trying to assist them? We may not be able to reduce the stress overnight. So how would that work? So that is one of my questions. Another thing that Vipka had said about communicating properly. How important do you think is internal communication within an organization when you talk about a EAP program? So how to let people understand what this EAP program is, etc., before you introduce it. So these are my 2 questions.
Okay, I can take the first one. That is the work hour issues and the stress issues. We were recently talking about mental health, social health, physical health, etc. But recently a new issue has emerged, that is digital health. Whenever we are working from home, one of the vital issues that has been hampered is our digital health. As you have mentioned, that we have time to enter, but we don't have time to clock this out. And in this era of 4th industrial revolution, our office is always with us. You have an internet connection, you have a smartphone, so you are always on job. Even if you go to washroom, sometimes you have to take your workstation with you. So this is a serious issue that is emerging. And recently, we are working on building awareness on digital health issues also. Some of the organizations, they have also understood the importance of digital health. And they're also communicating with our organization like academia also, as well as PHWC, regarding the digital well-being. So we are working on that. We are developing a complete protocol and plan regarding the digital well-being. So I hope that will help in the long run in near future. Thank you. So I have taken the first one. I think if Vipka would like to take the second one, that would be it.
Okay. So is that for the closing comments? Sorry, I was disconnected.
Yeah, I know you were disconnected, and
that's
same.
Fine. So apologies for that.
Yeah.
Yes. So just from my side, then a huge thank you for having me join this discussion. I very, very much look forward to hearing more coming out of Bangladesh from PHWC in terms of the developments. I'm really looking forward to the research you're working on. And I think it is exciting to see the development, to see the growth of this field and the important contribution it will make to the people of Bangladesh. And so thank you for driving that. And really, it is a great honor and privilege for us to be part of that partnership. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vipka. Since we're actually out of time and we've gone over, so I'd like anyone else, if you have any, closing remarks before we end this session today.
Absolutely. I mean, this hour has gone by so quickly. We could have had another hour. I think we would have easily talked about it, and the questions are coming in as well. So there's absolute pleasure. Thank you very much. I do want to mention in the closing comments that Sajida Foundation is the kind of the umbrella that holds us all together. They are the backers behind PHWC. They are the organizers of these webinars, and they are a really good example of a company that is very sensitive to mental health, to its employees, to its beneficiaries, to its social enterprises. I mean, Sajida Foundation takes the EAP services from PHWC as well, and people enjoy working for it. So just those are my final thoughts. And then thank you everybody for joining. I'll pass it over to Shreya, and then if you can finish our session today.
Thank you, everyone. If anyone else has, I'm guessing no one else has any ending remarks. I would like to end by saying that this has been such a great conversation, and I really enjoyed learning about EAP and organizational mental health and all that you had to say. We have had various comments and questions, which also made this a very, very interesting conversation. I'd like to say that I think it would be a great day when we come to that day when all organizations understand the importance of providing support for their colleagues for mental health, and for creating an environment that is helpful for the org, and they understand how it would also be helpful for the business of the organization as well. And then, we are going back to a week of whirling work again, starting for some people from tomorrow and for some people from Sunday. I hope everyone has a fruitful work week that is not as stressful and that is productive for everyone. And on that note, I'd like to end today's webinar session. Looking forward to everyone joining us on next Friday for our third webinar. A good evening to everyone, happy weekend, and a happy work week to everyone. Tata.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.